When Elon Musk walked into First Century Bank disguised as a homeless man, he expected rejection. What he didn't expect was to discover the woman who would revolutionize global banking and expose a truth that would shake the financial world to its core. Before we dive into the story, share in the comments where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The marble floors of First Century Bank's Beverly Hills branch gleamed under crystal chandeliers, a temple of wealth where money whispered and appearance was everything. Jessica Chen stood behind her trainee desk, watching the scene unfold with a knot growing in her stomach. The man in the tattered coat shuffled toward the reception desk, his shoulders hunched against the judgmental stares of clients in tailored suits. Jessica noticed things others missed. The way he carried himself, despite the dirt-stained jacket and frayed jeans, suggested a quiet dignity. His eyes, sharp and observant, seemed to take in every detail of the opulent lobby. But most telling was his hands. Clean, with well-maintained nails, a subtle contradiction to his weathered appearance. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," Marilyn, the head receptionist, announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Her voice dripped with the practiced disdain reserved for those deemed unworthy of First Century's prestigious services. "This is a private institution." The man smiled, a small, knowing gesture that made Jessica's pulse quicken. "I'd like to open an account," he said softly, his articulation perfect, another detail that didn't quite fit. Marilyn's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched higher. "I'm sure there are other establishments better suited to your situation." Her hand moved toward the security button beneath her desk. Jessica felt her fingers tighten around her pen. Everything about this man's demeanor contradicted his appearance. A homeless person wouldn't stand so still, wouldn't speak so precisely, wouldn't... Her thoughts froze as the man's gaze met hers. For a fraction of a second, something passed between them. A glimmer of amusement in his eyes, a subtle nod of acknowledgement. Jessica's heart thundered in her chest. She knew that face. Beneath the dirt and fake beard, beneath the carefully crafted disguise. But before she could process the revelation, Maxwell Sterling, the bank's regional director, emerged from his office. His presence filled the lobby like a storm cloud, and Jessica watched him assess the situation with cold efficiency. "Is there a problem here?" Sterling's voice cut through the tension. "No problem at all," the disguised man replied, reaching into his coat. "I just found something interesting about your institution that I needed to verify personally." He pulled out what looked like a folded document. Sterling's face paled as he glanced at whatever was written on that paper. The change in his demeanor was instant and dramatic. What happened next would not only change Jessica's life forever, but would expose a decades-old secret that First Century Bank had buried beneath its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. "You're right. Let me extend this section to reach the full 1,000 words while maintaining the tension and pacing. I'll continue directly from where we left off." Jessica's hands trembled as she organized loan applications, her mind racing back to the document she'd glimpsed in the mysterious man's hand. Through the glass walls of Sterling's office, raised voices carried across the lobby. The regional director's face had shifted from pale to crimson, his composure cracking like a porcelain mask. 7 years of working in banks had taught Jessica to read people's faces like balance sheets. Sterling's expression wasn't just anger, it was fear. Raw, unmistakable fear. The kind of fear that could only come from exposure. "Miss Chen." Marilyn's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "Mr. Sterling would like to see you. Now." Jessica's stomach dropped. In 6 months as a trainee, she'd never been called to Sterling's office. She smoothed her skirt, painfully aware of every eye in the lobby following her journey across the marble floor. The click of her heels echoed like a countdown. Inside the office, Sterling sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his face now composed but tight. The disguised man stood by the window, his back turned to her. But something had changed. His posture was different, more commanding. "Close the door, Miss Chen," Sterling instructed, his voice unnaturally calm. As Jessica reached for the handle, she caught a glimpse of the document on Sterling's desk. The letterhead made her blood run cold. Federal Banking Commission, Confidential Investigation. Miss Chen, the man by the window spoke, turning slowly. I've been watching you. You saw something, didn't you, when I walked in? The fake beard was gone. The dirt on his face had been partially wiped away, and there was no mistaking him now. Elon Musk stood before her, his eyes intense and searching. Jessica hesitated, her career training screaming at her to stay quiet, to play it safe. But something deeper, perhaps the same instinct that had noticed those incongruent details earlier, pushed her forward. The numbers don't add up. Sterling's sharp intake of breath confirmed she'd struck a nerve. What numbers, Miss Chen? Musk asked softly, encouragingly. Jessica's heart pounded, but her voice steadied. The quarterly reports, the pattern in the international transfers, the way certain accounts seem to— She swallowed hard. Disappear. Musk smiled, but Sterling cut in. That's enough. Miss Chen, you signed a confidentiality agreement when you hired her to be a silent observer of your money laundering operation? Musk finished, his tone razor sharp. Yes, I imagine you thought she would stay quiet, just like the others. The others. Jessica's mind raced to the succession of trainees before her, all mysteriously transferred or resigned. Each time, Sterling had called them into his office. Each time, they'd never returned to their desk. Her thoughts flashed to Sarah, the previous trainee who'd worked beside her. Sarah had noticed things too, had started asking questions about certain accounts. Then, one day, Sterling had called her in. She'd left the building looking pale, clutching her purse, and never came back. Tell me, Mr. Sterling, Musk continued, his voice cutting through Jessica's memories. Did you really think no one would notice the pattern? That no one would connect the dots between First Century Bank and the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands? Sterling's hand moved toward his desk drawer, but Musk's next words stopped him cold. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The FBI agents in the lobby might object. Jessica's eyes darted to the window. Sure enough, two men in suits had entered, speaking quietly with the security guard. Miss Chen, Musk said, pulling out his phone, what I'm about to show you will explain everything. But once you see it, there's no going back. Your life as you know it will change forever. He held out the phone, a video ready to play on the screen. The choice is yours. Jessica looked at the phone, then at Sterling's ashen face, then back at Musk. In that moment, she understood that she stood at a crossroads, safety and silence in one direction, truth and danger in the other. She thought of her father's words the day she'd taken this job. Sometimes, Jess, the right path isn't the easy one. He'd know. He'd lost everything whistleblowing on corporate fraud 20 years ago. She'd watched him rebuild from nothing, holding on to nothing but his integrity. Sterling's voice cut through her thoughts, suddenly gentle, almost fatherly. Miss Chen, think about your career, your future. Some things are better left. Like Sarah? Jessica interrupted, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. Is she better left wherever you sent her? Sterling's face hardened, and in that instant Jessica knew. She knew what her answer had to be. She reached for the phone. I'll continue with the next major section, 2,500 words, revealing the video's contents and escalating the stakes. The video began to play, its grainy footage showing the bank's underground vault after hours. Jessica recognized Sarah moving between the safety deposit boxes, her movements hurried and furtive. The timestamp read 2:14 a.m. Then Sterling appeared in the frame. You shouldn't have looked into those accounts, Miss Reynolds. His voice was different in the video, colder, stripped of its polished veneer. Some questions are better left unasked. Sarah backed away, clutching a file to her chest. People deserve to know what you're doing with their money, how you're using this bank to— The video cut to static. What happened to her? Jessica's voice trembled as she looked up from the phone. The Sarah she knew had left the bank alive, shaken, but alive. Hadn't she? She's safe, Musk assured her quickly, in witness protection. But others weren't so fortunate. He pulled up another video, this one showing the bank's parking garage, a different trainee from 3 years ago being forced into a black SUV. Thomas Chen, Sterling said softly, making Jessica freeze. Your father wasn't the first whistleblower to challenge us, but we learned from that mistake, made sure the next ones disappeared more quietly. Jessica's world tilted. Her father's case had been reported as corporate fraud at a different bank entirely. He'd lost everything, yes, but he'd been allowed to walk away, to live. You've been watching me, she realized, looking at Musk. All this time. Why? Because you're like your father. You see patterns. But unlike him, you have something he didn't. Musk's eyes gleamed. Us. The office door opened and 2 FBI agents stepped in, badges raised. Maxwell Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, and... A deafening crash cut through the air as Sterling's desk drawer flew open. The gun appeared in his hand so fast Jessica barely had time to register movement, but instead of aiming at the agents or Musk, he pointed it directly at her. Nobody moves. Sterling's voice was eerily calm. Miss Chen and I are going to take a little walk to the vault. There's something she needs to see. It's over, Max, one of the agents said, his own weapon drawn. The evidence is in the vault, Sterling finished, along with enough explosives to take out 3 city blocks. Dead man's switch. If my heart stops or I let go of this trigger... He pulled a small device from his pocket. Well, First Century Bank's secrets stay buried, along with everyone in it. Jessica's training kicked in. Risk assessment, threat evaluation. The bank was full of clients, employees, innocent people who had no idea their mundane Thursday morning was about to become a headline. Okay, she said, raising her hands slowly. I'll go. Jessica, don't. Musk started. My father walked away. She cut him off, her voice steadier than she felt. And people died because of what was hidden here. I won't walk away. Sterling smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. Smart girl. Now move. The elevator ride to the vault level was silent, heavy with unspoken threats. Jessica's mind raced, cataloging details. Sterling's finger on the trigger, white-knuckled, trembling slightly, sweat beating at his temples despite the cool air. A man on the edge, but still calculating. Why me? She asked as they approached the vault's massive door. Why show your hand now? Because you're the key, Miss Chen. Sterling's laugh was hollow. Quite literally, your father made sure of that before he left. The vault door looked exactly as it had yesterday, its polished surface reflecting their distorted images. But as Sterling forced her closer, Jessica noticed something different. A tiny imperfection in the metalwork, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Your father's insurance policy, Sterling explained. A back door into the system, coded to his DNA signature, and yours. He pressed the gun harder against her ribs. Open it. I don't know how. Palm on the scanner, now. Jessica glanced at the standard biometric panel, then back at the imperfection in the metal. A memory surfaced. Her father teaching her to play piano as a child, showing her how complex patterns could be hidden in simple sequences. She placed her palm on the scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a series of lights flickered across the panel in an odd pattern. The vault door shuddered, but instead of opening normally, a hidden panel slid aside, revealing a narrow corridor Jessica had never seen before. If you're enjoying this story so far, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It costs you nothing, but for us, especially in these early days, it means the world. Let's continue with what happens next. Ladies first, Sterling gestured with the gun. The hidden corridor led to a smaller room, its walls lined with servers humming with quiet efficiency. Screens displayed scrolling data, account numbers, transactions, a digital web of evidence documenting decades of financial crimes. Impressive, isn't it? Sterling's voice echoed in the confined space. Your father's greatest work. A shadow ledger tracking every transaction this bank has ever processed, legal and otherwise. The perfect insurance policy, Jessica realized. Dead man's switch, if anything happened to him. The data would automatically upload to every financial regulatory body in the world. Sterling nodded. Which is why we let him walk away. But he left us a gift. You. The only other person whose DNA could access this room. To finish what he started, Jessica whispered. To die, trying, Sterling corrected, raising the gun. I'm truly sorry, Miss Chen, but some secrets are worth killing for. A shot rang out. Jessica flinched, but the bullet never came. Instead, Sterling crumpled forward, revealing Musk standing in the doorway, a small taser in his hand. Actually, Musk said, stepping over Sterling's unconscious form, some secrets are worth saving lives for. The FBI agents rushed in behind him, securing Sterling and the detonator, but Jessica barely noticed them. Her attention was fixed on the screens, on the data that represented thousands of lives affected by the bank's crimes. What happens now? She asked, not taking her eyes off the scrolling numbers. That depends, Musk replied, coming to stand beside her. Your father built this system to expose the truth, but exposure isn't enough anymore. The financial system needs more than just transparency. It needs transformation. He turned to face her fully. I'm not just here to shut down First Century Bank, Jessica. I'm here to replace it, to build something new, something that could change banking forever. He paused, studying her reaction. But I need someone who understands both the numbers and the human cost. Someone who sees patterns and cares about their impact. Why me? Because you didn't just see the patterns in the transactions. You saw the pattern in people disappearing, in lives being ruined. You could have looked away, played it safe, but you chose to look closer. A commotion from the main vault interrupted them. FBI agents were calling for backup, their voices urgent. Something about additional suspects, about evidence of a larger conspiracy. We should go, Musk said, gesturing toward the exit. There's a lot more to discuss, and this isn't the place. Jessica started to follow, then stopped. Wait. She turned back to the nearest terminal, her fingers flying over the keyboard. If this is my father's system, then maybe... The screen flickered, then displayed a new message. Protocol Omega initiated. Uploading all data. What did you just do? Musk asked, watching as the servers hummed louder. In short, the truth can't be buried again. She straightened up, meeting his gaze. You said you wanted to transform banking. Let's start by making sure everyone knows why it needs to change. Musk's expression shifted from surprise to admiration. But before he could respond, the lights in the server room began to flash red. A new message appeared on the screens. Unauthorized access detected. Remote override in progress. They weren't the only ones with access to the system, and somewhere out there someone was trying to stop what Jessica had started. The race to expose the truth had just become a race against time. Warning lights bathed the server room in crimson as Jessica's fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code reflected in her glasses as she fought against the remote intrusion attempting to shut down her father's system. How long? Musk asked, his phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated with someone on the other end. Minutes. Maybe less. Jessica's voice was tight with concentration. They're good. Really good. These aren't just hackers. They know the system architecture. She paused, a realization hitting her. They helped build it. The server's hum grew louder, more urgent. On the main screen, a progress bar showed the data upload at 47%, but it was slowing. Windows of code popped up faster than she could close them, each one trying to terminate the process. Your father's old team, Musk confirmed, ending his call. The ones who helped him create this shadow ledger. They're trying to protect themselves. A new message flashed across the screen. Protocol termination initiated. All data will be purged. No, no, no. Jessica muttered, her fingers moving faster. This wasn't just about exposing one bank's crimes anymore. The data in these servers could implicate dozens of financial institutions, hundreds of executives, possibly even... She stopped mid-keystroke. Oh, God. What is it? Look at these account numbers. She pointed to a stream of data flowing past. These aren't just private accounts. These are government transactions, defense contracts, black budget operations. She turned to Musk, her face pale. We're not just dealing with bankers. We're dealing with people who can make us disappear, he finished grimly, just like they did with the others who got too close. The server room door burst open. 2 FBI agents rushed in, their expressions urgent. We need to evacuate, now. We've got multiple unmarked vehicles approaching the building. How many? Musk demanded. Too many, and they're not showing any credentials our people recognize. The upload was at 62%, but the progress bar had almost stopped moving. Jessica could feel the weight of years of corruption and conspiracy in every byte of data they were trying to save. Her father had built this system as a failsafe, never knowing his daughter would one day be the one to activate it. Go, she said, not looking away from the screen. I can hold them off, but I need time. Not happening, Musk replied firmly. Either we both leave, or neither of us does. Another warning flashed. System purge in 3 minutes. Jessica's mind raced. There had to be a way. Her father wouldn't have built this system without... Wait. Dad always said the simplest solution is usually the best one, she murmured, reaching for her phone. Her hands shook as she pulled up the calculator app, but not from fear. From recognition. The same pattern, the same game she'd played as a child. She punched in a sequence of numbers, her father's favorite piano piece translated into digits. The server's warning lights suddenly shifted from red to green. Omega Protocol override accepted. Beginning total system upload. How did you... Musk started. My father taught me to play piano before he taught me banking, Jessica explained, a small smile playing at her lips. Music is just math you can hear, and some patterns never change. The upload speed tripled, data flooding out through hidden channels to servers across the globe. But they weren't out of danger yet. Heavy footsteps echoed from the main vault. Voices approached, professional, methodical, dangerous. Time to go, one of the FBI agents urged, drawing his weapon. 10 more seconds, Jessica promised, watching the progress bar leap forward. 89%, 93%, 97%. The footsteps grew closer. 98%. Voices right outside the door. 99%. Metal scraping against metal, someone trying to override the lock. 100%. Upload. Complete. Initiating system purge. Jessica stepped back from the terminal just as the door burst open. But instead of armed men, they found an empty corridor. The heavy footsteps had been a recording, played through the vault's security system. Oldest trick in the book, Musk said with a hint of admiration. Distract them with what they expect while the real escape happens somewhere else, Jessica finished. She pointed to a maintenance hatch in the corner, barely visible behind a server rack. Service tunnel leads to the subway maintenance level. They moved quickly, Jessica pausing only long enough to initiate the server room's physical destruction sequence. As they crawled through the narrow tunnel, the sound of grinding metal and electrical surges echoed behind them. Her father's system was destroying itself, but its secrets were already spreading across the internet, impossible to contain. The tunnel ended at a maintenance door. Beyond it, they could hear the rumble of subway trains. But when Musk pushed against the door, it didn't budge. Someone's blocked it, he said, pushing harder. From the outside. Jessica's phone buzzed. One new message from an unknown number. Did you really think we wouldn't have contingencies for contingencies? I'll continue directly from the last moment to complete the 1,500-word section. The message flashed again on Jessica's phone, followed by another. Your father's tricks won't save you, but we can. The rumble of the subway grew louder, accompanied by a new sound. Footsteps on metal, approaching from both directions of the tunnel. "They're hurting us," Musk muttered, still pushing against the door, "using the maintenance shaft to trap us between teams." Jessica stared at her phone, another message appearing. "Be smart, Miss Chen, like your father was. Take the deal." The footsteps grew closer. In the dim emergency lighting, shadows stretched along the curved tunnel walls. They had maybe 30 seconds before they'd be surrounded. "Any other tricks your father taught you?" Musk asked, his voice tight but calm. Jessica looked at her phone, then at the door, then at the maintenance panel beside it. A memory surfaced. Not of her father this time, but of late nights studying the bank's infrastructure. Every system had a weakness. Every lock had a key. "Actually, yes." She pried open the panel, revealing a maze of wires. First Century Bank was built in 1987. They updated everything except... She yanked a red wire. The emergency lights went out, plunging the tunnel into darkness. The footsteps faltered. "Except the original emergency protocols." The door clicked open. They slipped through just as flashlight beams cut through the darkness behind them. The subway platform was deserted. Maintenance hours, when even the cleaning crews were gone. "This way," Musk gestured toward the emergency stairs. But Jessica grabbed his arm. "No, they'll expect that." She pointed to the tunnel. "The next station is 8 minutes by train, 2 minutes by maintenance cart. You're suggesting we... unless you have a better idea." The sound of the door crashing open behind them made the decision. They sprinted to the small maintenance cart parked on the service lane beside the tracks. Jessica's hands flew over the simple controls, another system unchanged since the 80s. The cart hummed to life just as their pursuers emerged onto the platform. But instead of shooting, they held their position. One of them stepped forward, his face hidden in shadow. "Think about what you're doing, Miss Chen," he called out. "That data doesn't just expose criminals, it exposes good people too, people who had to make hard choices. Like the choice to make my father disappear." Jessica's voice echoed through the station. "To threaten everyone who got close to the truth. Your father lived because he understood the bigger picture. Some secrets protect more than reputations." The man took another step forward, and Jessica's blood ran cold. She recognized that voice. From years ago, from the day her father had come home defeated, broken. Uncle Robert. Her father's former partner emerged into the light. The man who'd been best man at her parents' wedding, who'd taught her to ride a bike. "The world isn't black and white, Jessica. What your father built, what we built, it kept certain balances in place. Necessary balances." "Necessary?" The word tasted bitter. "Like what happened to Sarah was necessary?" "Come with us," Robert pleaded. "Let us explain everything. Your father would understand." "No," Jessica said softly. "He wouldn't." She slammed the cart into gear. It lurched forward just as the first shots rang out, warning shots aimed at the walls. They didn't want to kill her, just stop her. That would be their mistake. The cart accelerated into the tunnel's darkness, the wind whipping Jessica's hair. Beside her, Musk held on as they took the curves at dangerous speeds. Behind them, flashlight beams grew more distant. But they weren't safe. Not yet. Jessica's phone buzzed one final time. "You've chosen your path, just like your father did. Remember, he survived because he took the deal. You don't have that option anymore." The message ended with a countdown timer. 15 o'clock minutes and ticking down. They had a quarter of an hour to escape a trap that had taken decades to build, and somewhere in the city above them, powerful people were mobilizing to make sure the truth stayed buried, along with anyone who tried to expose it. The maintenance cart's headlight cut through the darkness, illuminating tracks and rats in flashes of harsh reality. Jessica's mind raced faster than their makeshift escape vehicle, calculating distances, possibilities, threats. The timer on her phone showed 13:42 and counting down. "They're not following," Musk observed, his voice barely audible over the cart's rattle and the wind. "Why aren't they following?" "Because they don't need to." Jessica's eyes stayed fixed on the tunnel ahead. Think about it. 15 minutes. It's not just a deadline, it's a radius. Musk's expression shifted as understanding dawned. They're not trying to catch us. They're closing the perimeter. Jessica took a sharp curve, the cart's wheels screeching in protest. Every exit, every station within a 15-minute radius of the bank, they're turning this escape route into a trap. Her phone buzzed again. Not a message this time, an alert. The data they'd uploaded was starting to make waves. Headlines were breaking across financial news networks. Global banking scandal exposed. First Century Bank linked to international conspiracy. Federal authorities launching massive investigation. But mixed with the legitimate news were other stories, already spinning a counter-narrative. Terrorist hack threatens banking stability. Cyber attack on financial institutions traced to domestic extremists. They're getting ahead of the story, Musk noted grimly, reading over her shoulder. Discrediting the data before people can verify it. 11.27 minutes remaining. The tunnel curved upward, and Jessica felt her stomach drop. They were approaching the river crossing. The maintenance tunnel would narrow with barely enough room for the cart. One wrong move. A distant rumble made her grip tighten on the controls. "Please tell me that's not what I think it is," Musk said. "The subway service doesn't start for another hour." Jessica checked the time. 4:47 a.m. That's not a regular train. The rumble grew louder and Jessica's phone lit up with another message, this one accompanied by a video. It showed a modified maintenance train, equipped with reinforced bumpers and what looked like tactical gear, leaving the central depot. They're not just closing the perimeter, she realized. They're forcing us toward it. 9:53 remaining. The river tunnel loomed ahead, its entrance a dark maw in their headlight beam. The maintenance pathway narrowed exactly as she'd feared, leaving inches on either side of their cart. Behind them, the pursuit train's headlight appeared, growing larger by the second. "Options?" Musk asked, his calm voice belying the urgency of their situation. Jessica's mind raced through the subway system's layout. The next station was still a minute away, but between here and there. "Do you trust me?" she asked suddenly. "Considering the alternative is getting caught by people who make others disappear, absolutely." "Good." Jessica reached for the cart's primitive control panel. "Because this is either brilliant or suicidal." She killed the headlight. Darkness enveloped them instantly, broken only by the pursuing train's distant beam. The cart's rattle echoed off the tunnel walls, making it impossible to judge distances. Jessica drove by memory and instinct, feeling rather than seeing the subtle changes in the track's gradient. 7.22 minutes remaining. "There's a maintenance switch ahead," she explained, raising her voice over the growing roar of their pursuit. "Used to divert trains during the river tunnel's construction. If it hasn't been sealed, and if it has, then we'll know very quickly." The pursuit train's horn blasted through the tunnel, the sound amplified by the confined space. They were trying to panic her, to make her turn the light back on, to make her reveal their exact position. Instead, Jessica reached for the brake. "What are you?" Musk started. "When I say jump, jump left." Her hand found the cart's simple emergency release. Don't think, don't hesitate, just jump. 5.46 minutes remaining. The pursuit train's light illuminated their cart now, casting long shadows ahead of them. In its beam, Jessica caught glimpses of the tunnel wall rushing past. She counted the maintenance markers, glowing faintly in the light. 3 markers. The train's horn blasted again, closer. 2 markers. The sound of squealing brakes filled the tunnel. 1 marker. "Jump!" They leaped left as Jessica yanked the emergency release. The cart lurched right, hitting the switch track at full speed. Metal screamed against metal as their vehicle derailed, skidding sideways into the darkness. The pursuit train's brakes shrieked as its drivers finally spotted the derailed cart in their path. They swerved, but physics and momentum won out. The larger vehicle clipped their abandoned cart, sending it spinning. Jessica and Musk landed hard on a maintenance platform half hidden in an alcove. The impact drove the air from her lungs, but she forced herself to stay still, to stay silent. The pursuit train screeched to a halt, its headlight illuminating the wreckage of their cart. Armed figures emerged, sweeping the area with flashlights and weapons. But they were looking forward, toward where the cart should have carried its passengers, not up and to the left, where a dark maintenance shaft led to one of the river's ventilation towers. 3.17 minutes remaining. "They're sealing every exit," one of the armed men reported into a radio. "No sign of targets. Possible track switch malfunction caused derailment." "Find them," a familiar voice replied. "Uncle Robert. That data goes live in 3 minutes. If we don't have them by then—" Jessica held her breath as a flashlight beam swept past their hiding spot. In the dim light, she could see Musk calculating their odds, measuring the distance to the maintenance shaft. They had one chance, one path to escape the perimeter before it fully closed. But as Jessica checked her phone one last time, she realized their problems were just beginning. The data they'd uploaded was being systematically erased from servers worldwide. Somehow, their opponents had reached even further than she'd imagined, which meant the only copy of the truth that could still expose everything was downloading right now to her phone. 2 minutes remaining, and the battery was at 7%. The maintenance shaft stretched upward into darkness, its metal rungs slick with river mist. Jessica checked her phone again. 1:42 remaining, battery at 6%, and the most damning financial data in history still downloading. Below, flashlight beams crisscrossed the tunnel as the search intensified. "How far up?" Musk whispered. 12 stories. Jessica fought to keep her voice steady. "The ventilation tower comes up near the river's edge." A voice echoed from below. "Check the maintenance shafts." They climbed. The rungs were old, some wobbling under their weight. Every metallic creak seemed to echo down the shaft, and Jessica's arms burned with effort. The phone in her pocket felt like it was burning too, a digital time bomb counting down. 1:15 remaining. Battery at 5%. Flashlight beams appeared at the base of the shaft. Jessica heard the distinct sound of weapons being readied. "Last warning, Miss Chen." Uncle Robert's voice bounced up the shaft. "That data dies in 1 minute, but you don't have to." "He's stalling," Musk muttered as they climbed. "Why is he stalling?" Jessica's mind raced even as her muscles screamed for relief. Uncle Robert wasn't just her father's former partner, he was a strategist. Every word was calculated. Every action had purpose. Then she heard it. Above them, metal groaned. "They're sealing the top," she realized with horror. "They've had people at the tower this whole time." 45 seconds. Battery at 4%. The groaning metal grew louder. Through the darkness above, she could see the maintenance hatch starting to close, their last escape route disappearing inch by inch. "Keep climbing," Musk urged, but Jessica had stopped. She pulled out her phone. The download was at 97%, but that wasn't what caught her eye. Behind the download screen, barely visible, was her last message to her father, sent 3 years ago. "Some battles aren't meant to be won, they're meant to change the rules. Jessica, we have to move." "No," she said, suddenly calm. "We have to play their game." She turned on the phone's speaker to maximum volume and held it over the shaft's edge. The sound of the download progress bar echoed down the metal tunnel. "You hear that, Uncle Robert? 98%. All that data about to go public, unless—" "Unless what?" His voice was closer now, tense. "Unless you give us a head start. Open the hatch, clear our exit, and this phone accidentally falls. All your secrets die in the river." 30 seconds. Battery at 3%. Silence from below. Then a laugh. Short, harsh. "You're bluffing. Your father's daughter wouldn't destroy the evidence." "My father's daughter knows when to fold a losing hand." Jessica's voice carried down the shaft. "But here's the thing about folding. Sometimes you do it just to stay in the game." The download hit 99%. "You've got 10 seconds to decide," she called out. "After that, either the data goes public or it goes in the river. Your choice." The metal hatch above them groaned again, but this time It was opening. "Stand down," Uncle Robert's voice crackled through multiple radios. "Let them go." Jessica and Musk climbed faster now, their muscles finding new strength in desperation. The hatch opening grew larger, revealing a pre-dawn sky painted in shades of gray and pink. 5 seconds, someone shouted from below. They reached the top just as the download completed, battery at 2%. The ventilation tower emerged onto an abandoned pier, the city skyline a jagged silhouette against the rising sun. No armed men, no ambush, just the sound of the river and distant traffic. "You know we'll find you," Uncle Robert's voice echoed up one final time. "This isn't over." Jessica finally allowed herself a smile as she pressed one last button on her phone. "Actually," she called back down the shaft, "it is." The phone's screen showed one final message. "Decoy, download, complete, actual data transmitted via secondary device." She held up Musk's phone, the real receiver of her father's data, its transmission completed long before their escape began. "Some battles aren't meant to be won," she whispered. "They're meant to distract you from the war you're actually fighting." The sound of angry shouts echoed up the shaft, but Jessica and Musk were already running, disappearing into the awakening city as the first news alerts began to spread across the world. Global financial conspiracy exposed. Thousands of documents revealed decades of corruption. The game wasn't over. But for the first time since her father's disappearance, they weren't the only ones playing it. I'll craft a powerful conclusion that brings the personal stakes and larger significance together, using the style from our reference stories. Dawn broke over the city skyline as Jessica and Musk stood on the balcony of a secure safe house, watching the world react to what would later be called the First Century Revelation. On dozens of screens behind them, news channels scrambled to cover the largest financial scandal in history. But Jessica wasn't watching the headlines. Her eyes were fixed on her phone, not the decoy she'd left behind, but a new one. On its screen was a message she'd waited 3 years to send. "Dad, I finished what you started. Come home." The response came minutes later. "I always knew you would. Check your email." The attachment was a video file recorded years ago. Her father's face filled the screen, looking exactly as she remembered him the day he disappeared. "Jessica," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "If you're watching this, you've discovered the truth about First Century Bank. But more importantly, you've discovered something about yourself." She felt Musk step away, giving her privacy as her father's message continued. "The system we built wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was about proving that one person's courage can change everything. The banks, the politicians, the power brokers, they all believe the world runs on money. But it doesn't." Her father leaned closer to the camera, his eyes intense. "The world runs on choices, Jessica. Small ones made by ordinary people who refuse to look away when something is wrong. People who understand that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the changes we make possible." Tears rolled down Jessica's cheeks as the video played its final moments. "I had to leave to protect the truth. But you stayed to reveal it. And in doing so, you've proven what I've always known. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't fighting the system." She whispered the last words along with him. "It's being willing to change it." The video ended, but its impact rippled through Jessica like a shockwave. She turned to Musk, who had been watching the news coverage in respectful silence. "What happens now?" she asked. He smiled, gesturing to the chaos of breaking news and market reactions. Now we do the hard part. We build something better." Jessica looked out over the city, thinking of all the people whose lives would change because of what they'd exposed. The corrupt who would face justice, the honest who would find hope, the system that would never be the same. "You know," she said softly, "my father used to say that every number in banking tells a story, but he was wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "The most important stories aren't in the numbers at all. They're in the moments when someone decides that doing what's right matters more than doing what's safe." The sun climbed higher, painting the sky in shades of promise. Below, the city was awakening to a new reality, one where the truth couldn't be buried in vaults or hidden behind wealth. If this story teaches us anything, it's that change doesn't always come from grand gestures or powerful institutions. Sometimes it comes from one person who refuses to walk away, someone who understands that every choice we make writes the next line in humanity's shared story. The question isn't whether you'll face such a moment of choice. The question is, when that moment comes, who will you choose to be?